At exactly 9:17 a.m., something unprecedented happens. Across the United States, every symbol of global dominance goes dark at once. Satellites stop transmitting. Power grids fail in perfect synchronization. Military systems, once thought untouchable, freeze, then go silent. Aircraft lose guidance. Naval fleets lose communication. Financial markets blink and vanish. This isn't an attack. There's no explosion, no enemy missile, no visible disaster. It's worse. America's superpower, its technological, economic, military, and political dominance, simply ceases to function. Within minutes, GPS dependent systems worldwide begin to fail. Cargo ships drift off course. Emergency responders lose coordination. Global internet traffic reroutes chaotically as key data hubs collapse. Stock exchanges from New York to Tokyo slam into emergency shutdowns as algorithms trained to rely on US financial signals spiral into uncertainty.
On the ground, confusion spreads faster than panic. Air traffic controllers stare at blank screens. Hospitals switch to backup generators. Citizens refresh their phones again and again, but the networks are gone. The most powerful nation on Earth has become suddenly ordinary.
But the real danger isn't just inside America. The United States acts like a stabilizing mass in the global system, similar to how a massive star holds planets in orbit. Remove that mass instantly, and everything else begins to wobble. Alliances destabilize, power vacuums open, long dormant tensions ignite. Systems designed around American leadership begin to fail, not gradually, but all at once. This scenario isn't political fantasy, it's a scientific thought experiment about interdependence, complex systems, and cascading failure. When one dominant node collapses, the shock doesn't stay local, it ripples outward at planetary scale. And the most unsettling question isn't how this happened, it's what happens next. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment your question below. Let's clearly define the scenario. In this what-if experiment, the United States doesn't explode, disappear, or get invaded. Instead, it loses all forms of superpower status at once. That means no global military dominance, no technological leadership, no economic control, no political leverage, and no ability to act as the world's stabilizing force. The country still exists geographically, and its people remain, but its influence drops to the level of an average nation overnight. This makes the scenario scientifically fascinating because modern civilization behaves like a complex, interconnected system. In system science, certain nodes carry disproportionate weight. The US is one of those nodes. Its military secures shipping lanes, its currency anchors global trade, its technology underpins communication networks, and its political influence shapes international rules. Remove that node suddenly, and the system doesn't gently rebalance. It experiences cascading failure. Think of it like removing the largest support beam from a skyscraper. The building doesn't immediately collapse in one clean motion. Instead, stress redistributes unevenly. Floors twist, cracks spread. Some parts fail instantly, others hold briefly before giving way. Scientifically, this scenario lets us explore chaos theory feedback loops and systemic dependency concepts used to study everything from climate change to power grids to planetary orbits. It also reveals how fragile normal life really is when it depends on invisible structures we rarely question. In this video, we'll explore what happens in stages,
The immediate global shock.
the rapid chain reactions across nations, and the long-term transformation of Earth's balance of power. This isn't about blame or politics, it's about understanding how deeply one nation's influence is wired into the mechanics of the modern world. Now, let's see where the first cracks appear. The first major consequence appears within hours: global technological disorientation. Modern civilization runs on invisible layers of synchronization time, location, data routing, and digital trust. A huge portion of that synchronization is anchored, directly or indirectly, to US controlled systems. When America's superpower status vanishes, those systems don't shut down cleanly. They lose authority, coordination, and reliability. It's our faute de France. The United States operates or influences many of the satellites that provide GPS timing signals. These signals aren't just for navigation. They act as atomic clocks for financial markets, internet servers, power grids, and mobile networks. When those signals become unreliable, systems drift out of sync by milliseconds. That may sound small, but in electronics, milliseconds can mean failure. Stock trading algorithms misfire. Cellular towers desynchronize. Internet packets arrive out of order. It's like an orchestra playing without a conductor. Every instrument still works, but nothing lines up. Now, aviation. Commercial aircraft rely on layered navigation systems, many calibrated around US standards. With guidance degraded, flights are grounded worldwide. Airports clog. Supply chains stall mid-air. Perishable goods spoil before landing. Medical shipments miss critical delivery windows. Then comes digital trust. Much of the world's cybersecurity infrastructure certificate authorities, encryption standards, cloud backbone services originates in or is regulated by US based institutions. When America's authority collapses, digital identity verification fractures. Secure websites fail authentication. Financial transactions pause because no one can agree which systems are still trustworthy. This creates a feedback loop. As systems fail, people switch to backups. But backups were never designed to handle everyone at once. Servers overload, emergency protocols collide, communication slows just when clarity is most needed. Scientifically, this is a classic cascading failure in a tightly coupled system. Like a power grid blackout, the initial failure isn't the most destructive part. The chain reaction is. And this is only the technological layer. While screens flicker and networks choke, something far more dangerous begins forming underneath a global power vacuum. As technology stumbles, the second major consequence unfolds: geopolitical chain reactions driven by environmental and systemic stress. For decades, the United States has acted like a pressure regulator in the global system. Its military presence keeps major trade routes open, its diplomatic weight suppresses conflicts before they ignite. When that regulating force disappears, stored tension is suddenly released, much like a fault line snapping after years of stress buildup. The first impact hits the oceans. Nearly 90% of global trade moves by sea. US secured shipping lanes, naval patrols, and surveillance networks quietly reduce piracy and conflict. Without them, key choke points, such as narrow straits and contested waters, become unstable. Insurance companies pull coverage. Cargo ships slow or stop entirely. Fuel shortages ripple outward as tankers hesitate to sail. Next comes energy. Oil, gas, and critical minerals depend on predictable transport. With supply routes disrupted, energy prices spike unevenly across regions. Power plants reduce output. Some countries experience rolling blackouts, while others hoard resources to protect their grids. Environmental impacts follow quickly. Dirtier fuels are burned as cleaner sources become harder to move, increasing pollution and atmospheric stress. On land, alliances begin to fracture. Treaties were designed assuming American enforcement. Without it, agreements lose their physical backing. Border disputes escalate. Military posturing increases not because nations want war, but because uncertainty is more dangerous than confrontation. This mirrors a principle in physics: systems with incomplete information tend toward instability. Food systems feel the shock next. Modern agriculture depends on global fertilizers, machinery, fuel, and data driven logistics. With trade disrupted and energy unreliable, crop yields drop. Import dependent nations face shortages within months. Ecosystems already stressed by climate change receive another blow as emergency farming expands into fragile land. Step by step, the chain reaction intensifies. Trade instability, energy disruption, food insecurity. Food insecurity, social unrest. Each stage amplifies the next. Scientifically, this is systemic amplification, a small initial change producing massive downstream effects. Like removing a keystone species from an ecosystem, the collapse isn't immediate, but it's inevitable. And as months turn into years, the planet begins adapting in ways no one predicted. Years pass, and the world enters the long term phase of the experiment. The immediate chaos fades, but what replaces it is something far more complex: a permanently altered planetary system. Without a single dominant stabilizer, Earth's human systems reorganize into competing regional blocks. Instead of one global center, multiple centers of power emerge. This might sound balanced, but scientifically, multipole systems are harder to stabilize. In astronomy, systems with several massive bodies experience chaotic orbits. Small disturbances grow over time instead of canceling out. Economically, the global market fragments. Trade becomes regional rather than planetary. Nations prioritize nearby resources to reduce dependency. This shortens supply chains but increases redundancy and inefficiency. Technological progress slows as collaboration decreases. Research once shared globally becomes siloed, delaying breakthroughs in medicine, climate science, and energy. Environmentally, the effects are paradoxical. In some regions, industrial collapse reduces emissions, briefly easing atmospheric pollution. Skies clear, wildlife returns to abandoned infrastructure. But elsewhere, environmental damage accelerates. With international climate agreements weakened, some nations exploit resources aggressively to secure survival. Forests fall, oceans are overfished, short term survival overrides long term sustainability. Human survival adapts, but at a cost. Cities redesign themselves for local resilience. Communities rely more on manual labor, localized energy, and decentralized systems. This increases resilience but lowers overall efficiency. Humanity becomes harder to wipe out, but also slower to advance. One of the most unexpected results is cultural divergence. With fewer shared platforms and standards, languages, technologies, and values drift apart faster. The world becomes less synchronized, more like separate experiments running in parallel. From a system science perspective, entropy increases. Order still exists, but it's local, not global. The United States, now just another node, adapts too. Innovation doesn't vanish, but it no longer scales instantly across the planet. Progress becomes incremental, not explosive. When long term outcome isn't total collapse, it's a quieter, fragmented world, less connected, less predictable, and more sensitive to shock. A civilization that survives, but no longer moves as one. And that leads us to the final question. What does this mean for humanity's future? So, what happens when America loses all its superpower status? Scientifically, the experiment reveals one powerful truth. Modern civilization is not built on independence, it's built on synchronization. When a dominant stabilizing force disappears suddenly, the damage doesn't come from destruction, but from misalignment. First, global systems lose timing, trust, and coordination. Technology falters not because machines break, but because they no longer agree with one another. Then, geopolitical pressure escapes containment. Trade routes destabilize, energy systems fracture, food chains weaken, and social stress amplifies across continents. Finally, over the long term, the planet reorganizes into a fragmented, multipolar world, resilient in some ways, fragile in others. This scenario doesn't end with extinction or apocalypse. It ends with a slower, quieter Earth. Humanity survives, cities adapt, nature partially recovers in abandoned spaces. But the age of instant global response, shared progress, and unified direction fades. Innovation continues, but without acceleration. Cooperation exists, but without enforcement. Stability becomes local, not planetary. From a scientific perspective, this mirrors what happens in nature when a keystone species disappears. Life goes on, but the ecosystem is permanently altered. New balances form, yet they're often less efficient and more vulnerable to sudden shocks. The most thought provoking part isn't whether this world is better or worse. It's the realization that power itself acts like gravity. It shapes orbits, behaviors, and expectations, even when we don't notice it. And once that gravity is gone, nothing snaps neatly into place. The world keeps moving, just not together.